Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
All right, welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast. I am joined by Thomas and Nathan Krick. Gentlemen, how are you?
We're doing great.
Well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you guys are identical twins, but one is better looking than the other, right?
That is the truth.
Yeah,
I get that all the time.
I got married first, so.
Well, there you go. There you have it. You heard it first. Or was Nathan just being pickier?
Oh, I was being pickier for sure.
I don't know. If me and Nate aren't in the same room, but we'd be wrestling if we were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No, I've got a brother, and we are not identical twins. But I'm certainly better looking than he is. He's kind of an ugly dude, and he does all the editing for this podcast. So I'm sure he'll hear this immediately. So he'll be the first to hear it. But at least he'll know the truth. You know?
Oh yeah, for sure. Nice.
No, Thomas and Nathan, you guys are identical draw, which, by the way, love the name. Nobody else can pull it off except for identical twins. So, So it's an incredible name, man, incredible story. Before we dive in, give me a quick introduction to yourselves and kind of how Identical Draw was birthed.
Yeah. Thomas, you could start.
Yeah, okay. Well, basically a love for the outdoors. At an early age, thanks to our dad. He dedicated his hunting time to take us out during spring and the fall. We never went big game hunting with him. That's something that me and Nate found for ourselves. But he got us out pheasant hunting one trip a year, which I'm thinking about doing for my own son because it gave me that hook so bad. Just only going out one time a year was like, you look forward to it so much. But yeah, I guess we just finally began pulling out that iPhone on different like spring turkey hunts. I remember Nate was the first one to film my younger brother shoot a turkey, and he was able to like send it to me, send it to my phone, and I was able to watch the whole thing. I was like, this is insane. Like being able to like relive the hunt that they just watched. So that they just did. So basically, we went to Heartland Bowhunter Film School, and that is kind of where we started this whole filming our hunts thing. And it's gone quickly since. We had like a trial fall that fall. Terrible footage. Didn't have a tree arm. It was basically one of us in the tree holding the camera while the other dude was.
Was that 2016?
Yeah, that would have been fall
2016.
Right? Yeah. So that was just like a fun trial fall, not really knowing where this whole thing would go. I was away 3 hours at college, and Nate was here in Lincoln at college. So every couple weekends I'd come home, we'd hunt and just kind of do that, and which led us to get on Carbon TV and the next spring start working with Bear.
Yeah, that I could piggyback off of that. I mean, this has all started because of an extreme love for the outdoors. Coming back from those first pheasant hunting trips and just crying the entire drive home and before school the next day because it was just what we lived for. And Thomas and I, we definitely got the itch the most out of everybody in our family, which is pretty obvious. And we've just, I don't know, we've been great friends. I know we're brothers, but we're also great friends, and we are good business partners with one another. So this whole identical draw things actually worked out okay. So like you said, the Heartland Bowhunter thing, that film school, it set us up for the content that we produce today. Like we want to have some of the best content, photo and video in the industry. That's just what we shoot for and aim for. So we buy the gear accordingly that can do that. And we also spend time on our hunts and things like that. But yeah, this whole identical draw thing was like a big dream starting out, but as every year passes, it just becomes more and more of a realistic thing for us. So we've just loved filming all of these hunts.
That's awesome, man. It's an incredible testimony to you guys as brothers, that you are such good friends and that you can work together so well. You know, me and my brother, like I said, he does all the editing for this, and so you know, we work really well together too. And he literally is my very best friend on the face of the planet, and that's just, it's a beautiful thing when not only you can be brothers, but you can have that friend relationship and function as friends would. Which is why I think it's so unique to follow you guys and watch you guys on social media and on Carbon TV, and just see the way you guys interact as not only brothers but as best friends. It's just it's a unique deal, and I appreciate it.
Definitely. Yeah. We appreciate hearing that, because two stories quick. We won our sophomore year of college, when Identical Draw was really starting to take off. We won a business pitch contest, and
basically like a Shark Tank.
Yeah, basically like a Shark Tank. Yep. So we were sent over to Estonia, the country over by Russia, and to work with entrepreneurs for like 2 weeks, and then we went to South Carolina for the final week, and just to try to work on our business. There were a bunch of other different companies that were at this like basically summit for 3 weeks too, and there were a few things I noticed. We, like, even though we wouldn't like agree on everything with the business, like we'd always work it out because we're brothers, we could figure it out. And after 2 weeks with all these other like companies, these new startups working together, I could see tensions growing among them. And Thomas and I, at one point, we were like, we're the only company right now that aren't having like little issues because they don't like one another, or they don't agree, because we're brothers and we've had to figure things out since we were born. And then the other thing, which I find really interesting, is those 3 weeks when we were meeting with entrepreneurs was basically amping up for another pitch contest, another Shark Tank, which you could win money from. And during the Q&A, I remember one of the judges looking me square in the eyes, saying, "This whole identical thing, the whole identical brothers thing, the twins thing, the brothers thing, it's not a niche. It's nothing for you guys. Like, it's not like it's funny and all, it's cool, but it's not going to do anything for you guys business wise." And I think that is like the farthest from the truth, because everybody we talk to thinks it's like a big deal and it's like our niche. And I think the brotherhood and the identical draw, the identical twin thing, is what makes identical draw. So
yeah, and that's what makes it, you know what I mean? You know, just two brothers doing hunt, I mean, it just adds a unique aspect to it.
Yep.
Before we dive in, because I do have a lot of questions and I am excited to dive into those. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick thank you to our friends over at Easton. They make some of the best arrows money can buy. I absolutely love their Axis lineup, and they just came out with an Axis 4mm, which is one of the best flying arrows that you could ever shoot out of your bow. I'm actually going to be shooting it out of my compound and my recurve. So go check out Easton and all of their arrows, but I would especially check out the Axis lineup and the 4mm Axis that they just released. So go check out Easton Archery. Gentlemen, what was it that drove you guys to bear archery? Like, what was the compelling factor of bear archery for Identical Draw?
That's a good question. So I'd say the biggest thing is anybody that dabbles in the archery world, you have to respect Fred Bear and Bear Archery. You just have to. I mean, there can only be one founder, and I mean, Fred Bear's the guy. So I think that was an overarching thing with why we love bear and we wanted to shoot bear in the first place.
Yeah, I think we'll get to it, Dylan, but like just the whole like the Fred Bear way, it stuck out to us, I guess, more than any other company. The history, everything that Nate just said, the history of Fred Bear, like I couldn't imagine, I guess, shooting for a different company. Nate's first bow was bear, wasn't it, Nate?
Yep, it was a bear with a trophy ridge sight.
Yeah, that's what every like new hunter, every kid getting into bow hunting, should shoot. It's just the OG of archery hunting.
You guys are, I say bear archery is I always tell people, this is my pitch for why people should shoot bear. You can spend the least amount of money and have the best shooting bow you can buy a very cheap bow from Bear Archery and kill an elk.
Yeah.
And you can't do that from any other company, period.
Yeah.
So that's my pitch. You can't.
You're right. And that is, a lot of times Bear Archery, and we're aware of this, gets the rep for being the beginner bow. Because they do make such great bows for the beginners. I just ordered my daughter a new Royale, and that's going to be her first bow. And I got my wife a new Legit, and so they do make phenomenal entry level bows. And so oftentimes they get tagged as being the bow for beginners, and that's true. If you're gonna, I would recommend to anybody, if they're getting started, to look at Bear Archery, because like you guys said, you can buy cheap bows elsewhere, but you're not going to get a bow that performs near as good as a budget bow from Bear. So I do encourage beginners to look at Bear Archery, but they make some of the finest bows, period, for any bow hunter.
Mm-hmm.
For the guy who's going on a backcountry, mountain goat hunt, and the quote unquote real deal hardcore bow hunter, they make the bows for that guy in the Redemption, or in the Kodiak if you're shooting a recurve. I mean, they make some of the finest bows that you can put your hands on. And so oftentimes they get that mentality of being just a beginner bow, and then once you get serious, you graduate from it. And man, I faced that's my testimony to a T.
Mm-hmm.
I started with a Bear bow, started working at a bow shop through college, and I got bagged on a little bit for shooting a bear, and oh, you need to move up now. And so I did, and I got away from Bear for 4 or 5 years. And here's the problem. I had a Bear Charger, which was a budget level entry bow, and I could shoot that thing lights out. And I had it for however long I had it, and started working at the bow shop, and they said, you've got to buy a new bow. And so I'm not going to name any names, but I dropped, $1,100 on a bow. And for a college kid, that was everything I had. And my fiance at the time is seriously looking at me like, are you kidding me? You just bought a new car in a bow. And I'm like, well, I have to, because I'm a serious bow hunter. And so I took that $1,100 bow out, and I couldn't shoot worth a flip with it. And I'm like, why did I get rid of my $400 entry level Bear bow? And so I went through that process of 4 or 5 years, 5 or 6 years of chasing down the biggest and the best bows. And when I came back to Bear Archery, it was almost just like okay, I can get back to what I love now. I can get back to, and I got and I think the first bow coming back was probably the let's see here. I think the Kuma, not the Kuma 30, but I think the Kuma was my first bow back with Bear. And it was almost just like, this bow will compete with anything. Why did I ever think I had to leave, Yep. And, it was just that coming home feeling. And so, but I understand what you guys are saying fully and completely. Tell me about your 2020 year. What'd you guys accomplish in 2020? How did COVID play a role in 2020? Did you have to put a lot of your hunts off? I mean, how'd that year go for you guys?
Yeah, I'd say, so just to start off, complete 365 days ago, our January, February, March, for anybody that follows us, they know we have this 80 acres in Northeast Kansas. If you don't know us, go to our YouTube, Kansas City Land Series. It's kind of like our little whitetail niche. We've got just 80 acres of basically prime whitetail ground. I mean, it's probably some of the best whitetail ground in the country, I would say. I mean, you can't really beat Northeast Kansas, and we manage that heavily for whitetails and just wildlife in general. So our January, February, March, a lot of timber work. Most of the 80 acres is timber, so a lot of timber work. We're shed hunting. We're doing prescribed burns. But when COVID hit in March last year, we were able to do most of our trips. We had already bought our turkey tags, and so Thomas and I just traveling together. I mean, we weren't seeing anybody. We'd stay in the car, travel, hunt. And so, we were able to turkey hunt a decent bit. And I thought we had a pretty good spring last year. Hunted Nebraska, South Dakota, Wisconsin. Is that all of them, Tom, for turkeys?
Yeah, or Kansas too.
Oh yeah, Kansas too. Yeah, and most of those hunts were successful. I think every hunt but maybe Wisconsin, which we got really close on that hunt. But yeah, so our spring was pretty much normal. But I'd say the biggest thing about our year was last year at ATA, we went to this social media summit, which was basically how can we continue this hunting legacy? How can we retain hunters better? How can we get more people out hunting? How can we clean up social media so that people aren't turned away from hunting social media? And that was basically, that fueled our entire year because we left that conversation actually wanting to do something. And so we started this whole new hunter project, which was the bulk of our fall. We were taking new hunters on their first or maybe second hunts. And Bear played a huge role in that. They gave us 3 crossbows and bolts and all that stuff. And we had a bunch of hunters find their success with their first big game animal with the Bear crossbows. But yeah, we took out 11 hunters, I think 11 new hunters this last fall. We did an antelope hunt, we did a mule deer hunt, we did an elk hunt, and we did whitetail hunts. And it was the best fall ever. I mean, everybody was hooked. Everybody went back home and continued to hunt, shared it with their family, kids, friends. It was amazing. That, Thomas, you want to add?
Yeah. You had a good question, Dylan, because it's like it depends whose perspective you're looking through, like of how you'd rate a successful year. Me and Nate like killed the least amount of animals we ever have, like since getting into identical draw. Neither of us killed a whitetail buck on our 80. We spent like 60 plus days in the woods on new hunter hunts or our own personal hunts. But yeah, we had Spencer Newhart out to our 80. He's with Meat Eater. He writes and does a lot of rough, fresh, and wired hunt stuff, and he's on the Meat Eater podcast every once in a while. But we had him out to our 80 for a rifle hunt, and he was able to shoot our biggest buck at that time, who we had some history with. So that was like kind of our, I guess, personal, even though we didn't kill that buck, but that was like our non-new hunter hunt. That was kind of exciting for us this past year. But yeah, we couldn't have asked for a better fall. Just getting to personally learn from these new hunters how they think, like what's going on in their mind as like a whitetail doe walks in front of them at like 20, 30 yards. It was pretty much the same reaction from everybody. Like basically, like it was like numbing. Like they couldn't believe like what was happening. Just their reaction to it. Like if we had, honestly, looking back at the year, we had more successful hunts than I thought we were going to. We killed 3 whitetails in our first hunt. We had a new hunter shoot an antelope buck at 60 yards, and we picked out like specific hunters based on how much like archery practice they had for those first couple Western hunts, because we knew those were going to be the more difficult hunts. And then we had more of our newbies for the whitetail hunts, which we used the Bear crossbows for, which are just amazing. Like you can have never shot a crossbow, and then like 30 minutes later, like just be absolutely confident and dialed in at 20, 30, 40 yards. So those were fantastic, and we were able to shoot those 3 whitetails with them. But yeah, just like an outstanding year, learning mainly from these new hunters. We had a couple of good personal hunts. We did like a South Dakota mule deer, and I mean, Nate, did we do anything else besides that, like Western wise? I guess we were just with new hunters otherwise. But
Yeah,
we did a lot of whitetail hunting.
Yeah, a lot of I think for you and I, it was only that South Dakota mule deer hunt and then whitetail stuff. But yeah, I mean, we got out a ton, and like we had some really tough hunts, like our Colorado elk hunt. I mean, I hunted 8 days straight without seeing an elk on Colorado public land with new hunters. That's a grind.
Yeah.
That
can be rough.
That is rough, and we are putting in miles and some work in every single day. But then, like other hunts, I mean, like I had one of the best October whitetail hunts I've ever had with one of the new hunters. I mean, big bucks kind of thing, and like they were shook. Having the new hunters have that first or second experience with like a big game animal coming in close and like realizing that a shot opportunity might happen. Watching that was, I mean, my highlight. And we had one guy, we pick on him a ton. Our buddy Dylan, he was one of the new hunters, and he missed two like big Nebraska mule deer on public land. One at like 60 yards really wasn't his fault. The deer just dodged the arrow hardcore, but the other one, he just got buck fever at like 40 yards broadside on this huge muley. And just watching that play out that's what I love about archery. It's so hard. Yeah, I mean, you really have to be like perfect at your craft to have something like that come together. But yeah, that was the new hunter and Kansas City success this last year.
I mean, we were chasing like a 200-inch, slightly under buck on our Kansas 80. So that whenever we were like not doing new hunter hunts, that was our focus. He ended up getting shot by a neighbor who had been out like twice that year. That's just how it happens. But yeah, I think they rough scored him at some BS number. It was like, what was it, like 210, I think, and he broke off in two spots.
No, they rough scored him. They rough scored him at like 193 or 194.
Oh yeah, that's
which
right.
I mean, way too, like, before he was busted off, like, he was definitely borderline 200 inches, but he busted off at least 20 inches, I bet. Yeah. And so there's no way after busting off 20 inches, he's still 193. But yeah.
I know I've told you guys off air, but I work for Pope and Young. I'm their marketing director at Pope and Young. And so you get so many people come and they're like, dude, check out this 170. And I'm like, dude, that is a gorgeous 140, man. Congrats.
Yeah.
And they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, dude, 140 is a great deer. Be proud of it, man. But it's not a 170. And they like freak out. And I'm like, okay, just go get it scored by one of our official scorers. And then I'll take you at your word for it. And, then they'll call me back and be like, yeah, it's 143. And I'm like, all right, I told you. And I'm like, don't be ashamed of a 140, man. It's a beautiful deer.
Yeah.
But it's not a 170. And so people all the time are like, check out my 180. I'm like, when I see a score sheet, I'll believe it. But until then, it's a 150.
Yeah, that's funny. Me and Nate always pick on a buddy of ours that like it's his guess is usually about 20 inches higher than what it would be, and we always like just make like jokingly with the guy. We're just like always making like jokes with him because he always thinks the deer are bigger than they actually are. But yeah, it's funny.
Now I will say one time when I first moved to Kansas, I grew up in Arkansas, where the deer can fit in your back pocket, and I moved to Kansas and I get a deer on trail camera, and I was asking buddies what they thought it would score, and I'm like, no way, you're way over scoring this thing. And they're like, listen, dude, you have to understand something else. You're looking at deer that you're used to looking at deer that weigh 130 pounds, 140 pounds. And so it makes their antlers look big. This buck you're looking at probably weighs 300 pounds. So his antlers look a lot smaller than they actually are. And I'm like, no, and of course I was young, wet behind the ears. I had no idea what a Kansas deer was like. And I remember the first deer I harvested, I walk up to it, and the body, I was just like, holy crud. The body was massive, and it made the antlers look tiny. And so then it all came into perspective. But I do remember that was the one time I way underjudged a deer when they were actually right. And but yeah, man, I was just I never could have imagined the body difference. Because when I moved to Kansas, I was a 19-year-old kid, only hunted in Arkansas up to this point. And so I was used to these deer running around in southern Arkansas. You shoot a doe, weighs 70 pounds, you're happy. And then here I get, and you're shooting a doe that weighs 160, 170, 180, and that's a good doe. And I'm just like, man, it's a complete different game.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, we've just from owning that Kansas 80 for like 2 seasons, we've walked up on three big bucks, and yeah, the body size never gets old, just how massive they are.
They're like a horse. They're like a stinking horse. You see them and you're like, good grief, man. And we recently went down to me and Alec went down to southern Texas on a whitetail hunt, and we were asking the guy, well, what's a big bodied deer gonna weigh? Like, what's a big buck gonna weigh? And he's like, 140, 150. And I'm like, holy crap, dude, that deer I shot this year, the buck I shot this year in Kansas was not a giant. I'll tell you that. Was not a big deer, and he weighed 270, I think.
Yeah.
And I was just like, you're talking 140 on a big buck. Man, I was just it's just a different game. You get here to the Midwest, and it's just a different game than anywhere else in the country. And it's fun hunting for sure. But no, so what are you guys shooting this year? 2021. Bear Archery dropped an incredible lineup, which kudos to all the guys at Bear who worked on that. But what are you guys going to be shooting this upcoming year from Bear Archery?
I'd say, I mean, the best lineup that we've ever been a part of from Bear this year. Going back, Dylan, what you said, like you started off with the Kuma, and that was our first Bear bow, back to Bear as well. And man, I love that thing. I shot my first mule deer with it. I'd never been like so confident in my shot than from when I switched to Bear. But this year I'm shooting the Redemption EKO in the Fred Bear camo, which I think is awesome. By far the best bear bow I've ever shot. I haven't killed anything with it yet. Been on many hunts with it, and I've loved it. Been so confident with my shot. Nate, what are you shooting?
I'm shooting the Divergent EKO.
Nice.
And that is in the slate. Is that what I think that the darker gray, the iron. Yep, in the iron. And I've got the React Trio Pro on there. I've been shooting that for like quite a few years. I just love that sight from Trophy Ridge. But yeah,
it's one of the greatest sights ever.
Oh yeah, I just changing for like Western game, but it also works great for whitetail. Just having those 3 pins ready to go.
Can I give you a life hack?
Go for it.
You can get the Pro 1 dovetail, and those heads are interchangeable. So you can take the React Trio head and put it on the dovetail, and then you have the React Trio on a dovetail, which is what I've done. And I've shot that same sight now for 4 years, and it's just there's no need to change it because it's perfect. Because I love a 3-pin slider, but I love a 3-pin slider on a dovetail. So you can rip that head off of the React 1 Pro dovetail and put your Trio head on that, and then you've got the React Trio on a dovetail, and it's just phenomenal.
Gotcha. Nice. That's cool.
Yeah, I remember when I heard that because I had shot the React Trio for a year, and I heard that from one of the guys who was an engineer at Bear at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, those heads are completely interchangeable." And I'm like, "So you're telling me that I can put this head on the dovetail?" And he was like, "Yes." And I'm like, "And it'll work just like the React Trio, but it'll be on dovetail." He said, "Yes." And I was just blown away. And I ran home, and I went to Trophy Ridge, and I ordered a React 1 Pro dovetail, and I switched them out, and I have never looked back because it hits everything I want in a sight, and it's perfect.
Yep, definitely.
Now, are you guys? You guys said that. How many shooters did you say? Did you say 8 hunters shot their first animal with a bear crossbow? Is that how many you said?
So we had I think 3 shot whitetails with the crossbows. Is that right, Tom?
Okay.
Yep, 3. Yep.
Well, I was way off.
many close. We had, I think we had 7 or 8 whitetail hunters, and we were really close on many other accounts, but 3 were successful.
Which crossbow were they shooting?
The
Constrictor, I think.
The Constrictor CDX.
Yeah,
the Constrictor. The Constrictor's a great crossbow. I got my dad a Constrictor. His shoulders got too bad to pull a bow back, and so I got him a Constrictor, and he's fallen in love with it. He absolutely loves that thing. I think he leaves it in his truck year round, and he'll just jump out and start shooting it randomly. He loves it.
It was, just what Tom was saying earlier. It was our best option for just not having to worry about new hunters making a tough shot. I mean, they felt super confident right off the bat with just a little bit of practice. It was just ideal.
That's awesome, man. Now, I will say this, though. The legit, in a situation like that, the legit is perfect because literally within minutes, you can have it set up for a different hunter with different draw lengths and different poundages, which is why I think it's such a phenomenal bow. I ordered one for my wife, full knowing that if I go on a hunt, if I go to Idaho on a backcountry hunt, I can set that thing to 27.5-inch draw, 70 pounds, sight it in, throw it in my bag, and I have a backup bow, and it'll perform flawlessly. Or, if my wife isn't shooting it one day and my kids want to shoot it, I can crank it down, lower the draw length, my kids can be shooting it. It's literally just a bow that you could take on a backcountry hunt as serious as you need it to be, or you can shoot in the backyards with the kids. And so it's just a fantastic bow. But you're right. I mean, when you're trying to get somebody involved in hunting like that and do it rather quickly, and so you can move on to the next one, is a crossbow is the way to go.
Yeah, you just can't beat it. I mean, it's just so easy to use. We actually had a couple new hunters bring their compounds, just like thinking that they might be ready to shoot deer with that. And like by the end of, they had like just pretty strict rules with these new hunters. We didn't want like anything, I guess, traumatic to happen as like far as like a bad shot goes or anything like that. So we were pretty strict. Like if I think maybe it's Cam Haynes or whatever, he says like 2-inch group at 20 yards, 3-inch group at 30 yards. It's kind of like what we go by. That's what you should be shooting, like if you want to shoot at an animal. And like they shot, like they weren't bad shots, but they just like didn't have the confidence that me and they wanted to see. We just didn't want anything like bad, or we didn't want them to be turned away from hunting if they made a bad shot. So we had all three of these crossbows like already sighted in, and we'd be like, hey, you guys should try shooting these crossbows, like if you're not feeling fully confident. Sure enough, like after shooting them and like stacking groups in like a quarter size area, I mean, they all went out with crossbows the next day and just like felt confident as ever. I actually we had a late December hunt that we didn't actually like count towards our new hunter total number, but we had like seven hunters with us, and I think 4 or 5 of them were new hunters, just family or close friends, and they all shot crossbows, and I was like shooting one just to make sure we're all dialed in. And I actually Robin Hood one of our crossbow bolts. So that's just how accurate they are. Like I was even like specifically, I was aiming at different dots like on our target, but I forgot that there was already an arrow at one of them, and I just Robin Hooded it perfect.
That's hilarious, man. I remember when you're a kid, you like try to Robin Hood. You'll go to like 4 yards and shoot at your arrows, and now it's like, now you start crying because you're like, no, it costs money.
Yeah.
And, but when you're a kid, you don't ever think about money. You're just like, mom and dad will buy me more. And, or, I'll have to go find something I've lost in the past or whatever. I remember one time being out of arrows and going to walk around my backyard and looking in the grass for ones I had lost, and finding like 3 or 4 and like, yes, I can shoot again.
Yeah.
But now, dude, I got a cool message, and I just want to mention it because hopefully it'll be out on Bear's social media by the time this episode goes out. I got a message on Facebook from a guy named Ben Solaris, and he is from Australia. And so the message starts off with "Good day, mate," which just makes me super happy. But he goes on to tell me that he was on an axis hunt there in Australia and had a young kid with him who lived at the place, and took his Bear Cruiser and shot 2 wild pigs. And he's got footage of it, and it's just incredible to see this kid shoot his first animals, and for them to be with a cruiser, and it's just an awesome little piece of footage there. And so head over to Bear's social media, and hopefully that video will be up by now. But I'll tell Alec he needs to get it up before this episode drops. So it was just incredible. So go check that out because it made me super happy. And you guys are the ones that reminded me of that, talking about new hunters and getting them their first animals with a bow, and seeing this kid, his name is Willis, seeing him shoot his first animal. And the excitement and the joy on his face when he turns and looks back at the camera, and that pig's just squalling in the background, and he's just got the biggest smile on his face because he harvested his first animal. So go check that out. But before we move on, I do need to give a quick thank you to our friends over at Bowhunting. I just told you I got some new arrows in from Easton. The Axis 4mm, and I spent all yesterday, Sunday afternoon, fletching up several dozens of the arrows, and that's why I absolutely love Bowhunting, because they have the wraps, they've got the jigs, they've got several different veins, and I did 3 different vein configurations. And just after a little bit of shooting, the heat vein, which is a new vein for me, I've never used it, but the heat vein ran in a 4-fletch configuration, flies absolutely incredible. So go check out Bonding for all of your arrow building needs, all of your arrow component needs, because they are a powerhouse in arrow components. Now, one of you mentioned, and I don't remember who was telling the story, you said you went on an 8-day, or you had been in 8 days with new hunters and not seen any elk. How do you walk me through the steps you take? What's the word I want to use? To hold on to that hunter, to make sure you don't lose them in the, guys, I know this sucks, but just hang in there because it gets a lot better than this. Walk me through kind of that process of getting a new hunter involved, but the hunting isn't cooperating.
Yep, that's a good question. That hunting has a little bit of success if you look at it with kills. Even the best hunters go home empty-handed quite a bit, unless they're just paying for animals, basically. And so you have to make it about the experience. And that's what we're focused on with all these people. When we were young, going on hunts with our dad and uncles and cousins, we didn't shoot anything, but we loved it more than anything because of the experience we had, and it was fun and we were able to be outside. So that's what we focused on before, like way more than killing. We focused on the experience and building friendships and just having fun. And so we would just be positive. Like, I mean, there's a lot of jokes going around. I think the guy's name was Barry. We had him in camp for 4 or 5 days elk hunting, and I didn't even see an elk with that dude. I didn't see an elk, and the bugling was like so. We'd hear a little bit, but really, I mean, not very much bugling either. So we're busting our butts through the Colorado mountains. I mean, 9,000 to 11,000 feet of elevation, and we called in at least a few dudes every day. Like we'd see guys all the time, and it was a difficult hunt physically and mentally. But what you do is you just joke about it, you laugh about it, and you have to have a good time. You have to enjoy. If you want to hunt and you don't enjoy just being outside, just don't be a hunter, because you have to enjoy the little things. You have to enjoy just sitting and like listening and sitting and watching, just the trees, the birds, whatever, because you have to take those little things. And I don't know, a lot of hunting isn't successful. And so the biggest thing we tell them is like, hey, there's a lot of this, but sometimes when you finally get that little break and you get that real bull to answer and come plowing through the trees to 30 yards to like stare at you, like that'll grab you for life. And so you kind of have to tell them about what it can be, but also just be real with them. Be like, hey, this is what happens. This is Colorado, public land, over the counter tag. You're going to see a lot of dudes, and you're going to have to work really hard for the elk. And I mean, on that hunt specifically, it was grind. But hey, both of those hunters loved it. They loved it, and they continued with Barry, the first hunter we had in camp. He went and hunted for another week at least. Had some close encounters, and then the other elk hunter was our brother-in-law, and he's still jacked up about it, and wants to do more of it. But like the antelope hunt Thomas was mentioning, we had the first stock of the hunt with this new hunter. He double lunged an antelope at 60 yards, like really insane, amazing shot. That was one of the hunters. He had shot a ton, but never killed anything. But then the rest of that week was just a full-on grind of being in the hot South Dakota dusty air, and I mean, army crawling for what seemed like miles and not getting shots. And you just have to be real with them. Be like, guys, this is what it is. Like, enjoy this, because this is the process that makes you addicted to hunting. So yeah, just making it a all around fun experience.
That's awesome. And that's what you have to. Here's the problem: is a lot of people, when they try to get kids involved in hunting, or just new hunters in general, don't have to be kids, they try to make it all about the harvest. And when they do that, they lose the hunter, because, well, we didn't harvest, so I'm not a good hunter. Or we didn't harvest, so, well, this sucks. I thought this is what we're here to do. But when you get a kid involved, or again, anybody in general, if you get them involved in the entire process, and you teach them that we hunt for the process. We hunt for the joy. We hunt for the camaraderie. We hunt for the lessons learned. We hunt for the time spent outdoors. When you teach them hunting as a whole, then the harvest is just a bonus. And and what you do is you have now created that person into really understanding what hunting is, and you keep them as a hunter rather than almost essentially pushing them away from hunting in the beginning before they ever even get started.
Yep. And we also think like the Nebraska mule deer hunt, for example, like we just invested in those guys that came. It was 2 guys from California, Josh and Dylan, and they were great guys. We just invested in them, and we're friends with them. Like literally, we are friends. We just created friendship. And I mean, we would hunt, have a great day, great time during the days, chill out, play games. I mean, get a fire rolling at night. And I mean, Dylan, like I said earlier, he missed 2 like big public land deer, big 150, 160 inch deer easily. But I mean, he is the most lit up, on fire new hunter. I mean, like the guy is going to do it for his entire life. But you think like, how's he so invested after just missing the deer? I mean, you got to think that was like super hard, and like he'd just be burnt out. But no, like that dude's on fire. I mean, he's going to be a hunter for his entire life. So, I mean, even when it can be really tough during the hunt, if you do it right and you just make it all about the experience and the journey, you'll have hunters for life. So
something that I've been kind of like preaching, I guess, after like this whole fall experience is a lot of like the people in the outdoor industry are kind of like scratching their heads, focused on this retention thing. Like, okay, we can get people out, but we're just not seeing a good like retention rate. But that was simply like the furthest from the truth with our fall. Every single person went out again. And in some cases, like we had 2 new hunters, our last whitetail hunt, late October, they actually met up a separate time after this for like a Montana hunt, which was just absolutely awesome to see, like them just like continuing to pursue it. All of our hunters did. A lot of them were successful. They shot some whitetails, boar. They did some small game hunting, all sorts of things, and literally 100% like retention rate, just because they had an awesome time on the hunt, even though only 4 of our new hunters were successful with us. Like all 11 of them went out after, wanting it for themselves, just because I think me and they were focused on just the time spent with them, whether it was successful or not, just good conversations, bring back that camp vibe that everybody loves. That's kind of what we're focused on. I think if I could just like a PSA is like for anybody taking out hunters, just create that experience, whether or not you're having success or not. I think God bless any mentor like that's spending their own weekend to take new hunters out. But if they really invest in that hunter, I think we'll just naturally see retention rates stick a lot more than just a mentor just trying to get through the weekend. I think that has just helped so much with our new hunters continuing to pursue hunting.
It's not a one and done deal. Like Tom Senna, one of the antelope hunters, I mean, he calls us up every once in a while. Hey dudes, like this last season, he was like, I'm going to a new whitetail spot. This is kind of what it like, what like any advice you'd have. And I just sit down and talk with them for 15, 30, 40 minutes. And that's what you need to do. You need to be an all hands on mentor. But when you create friendships with people, it's like catching up with a buddy. So that's my 2 cents. Yep.
That's awesome. And I appreciate your guys' passion and desire to see new people get involved in bow hunting, especially, but in the outdoors in general. One new segment we've kind of started is Cooking 101, brought to you by our good friends over at Rebel 6 Seasonings. Do you guys have a favorite wild game dish, a favorite wild game meat? One way you like to prepare a certain wild game, anything cooking that you guys are really passionate about?
There's nothing, you can't go wrong with any wild game. I mean, it is the majority of the meat I eat in my diet. But one thing I would say with turkey season coming up is I'm starting to get the itch for some turkey. And I think people often struggle with turkey, but there's a few easy things that people can do. One of my favorite things I did was I borrowed a recipe from Danielle Pruitt, who works for Meat Eater, who has that Wild and Whole. And she makes these, it's like a Chick-fil-A nugget, like knockoff, but it's with turkey. And it was like the most insane thing I've ever had.
I've seen them. I've seen them, and they look phenomenal. I did it with pheasant.
Oh yeah,
it was really good.
Yeah, the turkey ones I did. I mean, head over to Wild and Whole and look up that recipe. It was to die for. So when I kill my first turkey, I'm gonna be dicing that up, and it's like a small little pan fry, and then she of course mixes up a bunch of good seasonings, and you can get a good dipping sauce and stuff like that, and it was killer.
I've recently experimented with ossobuco. I did that for the first time, loved it. It's basically just bone in like shank, which just takes time, kind of just simmering on the oven for a while. But more basic right now, I have chilling in the fridge, just like a back roast and some backstrap from this fall. So that's my go-to. Just I'll put some olive oil on it, simple seasoning, then just smoke it on the Traeger. That's my go-to.
Yeah, and that's one thing I tried new, and I'm sure there's a lot of technical terms I'm going to miss, and food critics will get all over me. But I tried ceviche with crappie, and I guess the premise behind ceviche is you use the acid and limes and lemon juice to cook the fish. So you create like this, I don't know what you call it, but a mixture of things, and then you drop your crappie in it, and that is what cooks your fish. And it was absolutely fantastic. But Rebel 6 makes wild game cooking easier because they make a lot of different seasonings for a lot of different wild games. So it's not just buy one seasoning and do all with it. They have venison seasonings, they have duck seasonings, they have fish seasonings, they have Midwest fish seasonings. They have, I mean, it's an awesome company that makes cooking wild game easier. So go check out Rebel 6. What are your guys' 2021's plans for the year?
Well, we are taking out 4 to 5 new hunters this spring, keeping the ball rolling. I think we're going to do Nebraska for sure, and either South Dakota or Wisconsin. I have baby number 2 coming the end of March. Actually, the Nebraska turkey archery opening day is the due date. So I'm still going to go out some, but we're only going to do 4 or 5 hunters just because I need to be home some of the weekends. But and then into the fall, we're gonna bite off a ton more hunters. Really focus on the whitetail, just because we realized that was just it was easy from one standpoint, but it's like the hunters were just able to have a little bit more game experience. A lot of them come and want to learn the whole cleaning the deer process. So we have a lot higher chance of getting them to see that with some whitetail hunts. So look out like for more opportunities to hunt with us. If you're a new hunter listening, our sponsors like First Light, Onyx, Bear, you'll see it on their pages. So give them a follow. And if any new hunters are listening and have any questions for us or anything along those lines, always DM us and we'll get back to you, whether it's a hunting question, a gear question. But yeah, personally, I think we're going to do a South Dakota mule deer, Montana whitetail, some more Nebraska whitetail and mule deer, and of course our beloved Kansas 80. Hopefully we can kill a buck again this next year.
I would say, yeah, a whole host of new hunter hunts, like Tom said, but I think for us this year, with how just the Kansas 80 this last year was a tough season. I mean, mainly because we just didn't hunt as much as we normally do with the new hunter hunts. But I think this year, our management season is just different. We're just going about things different. And I think it's going to be a much better hunting year down there. So I am very much anticipating the next Kansas buck tag that gets filled. So yeah, it's going to be an awesome year. Awesome fall.
I am excited to watch, continue to watch the 80, the Kansas 80 unfold. And, I'm rooting for you guys. I hope you guys will put down now what's after that 200, borderline 200 buck was harvested. What's your new target buck on that place?
So Spencer shot our Spencer Newhart shot our number 2 all fall. And we call him Club. Yeah, he was he actually broke off. So he ended up being a 15 point, just as non-typical as it gets. You can find him on our Identical Draw Instagram and on Spencer's as well. Awesome buck, didn't score super high. He was like I think he ended up doing 156. Everybody like we had a giveaway, if you could guess the score. Everybody's like 175, 180, just because he looks like, just with all his points, he looks like a lot. But his main beam length was more than his width. He was 11 and a half inches like width. He was just so tight.
Wow.
Yes, tight, super tall. So yeah, he got shot. And then our number 3 buck has been MIA since rival season. So we're counting him out. He was like a mainframe 12, which, I mean, everybody loves a big typical 12. So we have some good up and comers. We have a buck we call Half Rack, who like his entire right antler busted off like right past his brow. But his left side is incredible. So probably him with both sides next year is going to be awesome. And then I don't know, we have a bunch of good up and comers, nobody that like sticks out. And we were texting our neighbors and they're all like, yeah, like this is just an odd year. Like typically we have some big buck that made it through, like a big like 160, 170 that made it through the season, but our like the big deer round kind of got shot. So surely enough, some big deer is going to pop up, but we're kind of just waiting to see what we find shed wise and what the summer cameras show us.
There'll be at least 150, 160 inch deer for sure to chase after, which is good enough for me. I don't really care. I want something that makes me shake a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. Well, gentlemen, before we go, Fred Bear was big on field notes. So share with us a quick little tip that you've learned over the years that I can take, put in my back pocket, and will make me a better sportsman along the way.
That's a great question. Let me think.
That is a good question. We, as a little like hot tip, we have these down jackets. And if we ever forget our wind indicator, there's usually a hole or two poked in our down jacket. We take that little down feather and toss it in the air, and it shows, because it'll catch with any bit of breeze. That is our on the spot wind indicator.
Oh man, that's good. I would say I got 3 things, and it's kind of based on our new hunter hunts. There are 3 things that I noticed people needed to be successful, and it was 1, shoot your weapon a lot. Be super comfortable with your weapon as a hunter. That's the biggest thing I could do. Being in physical shape, super important for, I mean, especially Western hunts, but any hunt. Getting up in the tree stand, take care of your body, shoot your bow or ton so you're super confident. And finally, being mentally ready at all times when you're hunting. Just, you never know what's going to pop around the corner. You never know what's over the next hill. Staying mentally positive and ready, I think, was one of the biggest keys towards hunts this last fall. Those are my three pillars.
Nice.
Those are all 4 fantastic tips and things that we can all take and remember to use in the future. Now, before I let you guys go, do not forget that Bear Archery is doing a huge giveaway right now. So head over to the Bear Archery Facebook or Instagram to get entered to win. You're going to win a free bear hunt in Idaho this spring with Shane Mowry, the Bone Maniac. You're going to win a brand new 2021 Redemption, fully set up with all of your Trophy Ridge accessories. Pope & Young is going to cover your tags, and then our friends over at AmericanHunt.com are going to cover $250 worth of your expenses. So make sure and head over to Bear Archery's Facebook or Instagram to find that giveaway and find out how you can get entered to win. But I can go ahead and tell you that subscribing to this podcast will get you an entry. So go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Make sure and go follow Identical Draw on social media. You can figure out which one you think is the better looking one. Make sure and tell them. Make sure and tell them which one you think. I got a funny story real quick before we go. We were hunting with an outfit, Pope Brothers Guide Service in Texas. That's where me and Alec went. And we hunt with those guys every year. They're absolutely phenomenal. And there's a pair of identical twins there that work there. And they're both guides. And so one day we were being guided by one of the twins, and we had a great day of hunting. Well, then the next day we were headed down further south to hunt javelinas with the other twin, the other guide. And so we meet him, and we just have a killer hunt. We harvest tons of javelinas, and just an awesome hunt. And so in an interview on camera, I said, we're here with our guide, and might I add, he's the better looking of the two. Whatever I said. And we show back up a year later on the hunt, and we walk in, and the first thing dude says, I'm like, all right, which one are you? He's like, I'm the not good looking one, apparently. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, you've been harboring that for a year. And I'm like, I'm sorry I ever said anything. Well, come to find out, he had just watched the episode like the day before we got there, and so it was like fresh on his mind. But that was the first thing he said to me after a year was, well, apparently I'm the uglier of the two. And I'm like, okay, my apologies, man. But no, it was funny, but it was a good, fun hunt all around. But guys, one more thank you to our friends over at Koa Optics. They make some of the finest optics on planet Earth. So whether you're sitting in a tree stand in the Midwest or whether you're going out west to do a lot of glassing, make sure and check out Koa Optics. I've used them for my spotting scopes and my binoculars for the better part of 5 years now, and they are absolutely fantastic. So go check out Koa Optics. For all of they don't have shooting optics, so no rifle scopes, no rangefinders, but their binoculars and their spotting scopes are absolutely fantastic. So go check out Koa Optics. Guys, thanks for listening. Make sure to go get in on that giveaway. Make sure and go follow Identical Draw and tell them which one's the better looking of the two. You guys have a great week.
Thanks Dylan.